5 of Detroit Lions training camp, and we have the observations from practice today, so let's react to them. Let's get right into it. So yes, we're back with another observation reaction video for Lions training camp, and today it begins with some fantastic news on the injury side of things. Both Terrion Arnold and Derek Barnes returning to practice today as full participants, which was a little bit surprising for the Terrion Arnold news. I expected them to be a little bit more patient than this with a calf injury, but I would assume that it's just not that severe for Terrion Arnold and that he feels good for them to just be like, hey, they're going to be patient with this, is what we were told, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, he's back as a full participant the very next day. So I guess that's a very positive update with Terrion Arnold. I'll take it. I love the idea that he's going to continue to get reps here through practice as the pads come on with such a great start so far through training camp, seemingly. Also, of course, Derek Barnes. That one didn't seem like it was going to be significant, but I'll take it. Him being on the field, anything for Derek Barnes to be on the field is fantastic after this past season. Was no Tyleik Williams today at practice, but it doesn't seem to be an injury related. I guess we'll know more as we go forward here, but Tyleik Williams spoke to the media yesterday, which is typically a good sign, and he spoke on how he was a full participant. He's 100% full participant. He's good to go. So I would assume this isn't injury related for Tyleik Williams, which is still a positive, but he was not there at practice. Neither was Ian Kennelly, the undrafted free agent safety. However, we did get an update on Aidan Hutchinson, and I would say that's with his play on the field, because Aidan Hutchinson, we have been talking about him recovering from the broken leg this past season, and Aidan Hutchinson today apparently came out and he was fantastic. And when he spoke to the media today, he talked about for him, his expectation is to be in a better place than he was this past season because he has had essentially 9 months of training. Now, we look at it as recovering from the injury. I guess Aidan Hutchinson really doesn't really look at it that way. And as soon as the pads got on and they went to offensive line versus defensive line, he won his first 2 reps against Penei Sewell and Dan Skipper.
Feels normal, natural again?
Oh, yeah. Football, it's been feeling normal for a long time now.
Has been a positive, and it really does seem like now we're just getting a ton of different examples of, oh, yeah, Aidan Hutchinson is in a really good spot. And he talked about how it was the first day of OTAs when there was some contact and he was banged up, but he was fine, and that was kind of like, okay, I'm good to go. And as we go forward here with Aidan Hutchinson dealing with contact and getting pushed around and having offensive linemen give him resistance, I'm sure it's going to kind of tie into that whole mental thing that Kelvin Shepard talked about yesterday in just terms of being comfortable with that element of it. But so far, so good, I would say, for Aidan Hutchinson having those 2 wins. Don't know how he beat Penei Sewell, but any way to beat Penei Sewell one-on-one is a fantastic note. Take it back. We actually do know how he won. First off, this get-off is disgusting. The timing is excellent here. He times this up so well. It's like he hasn't lost a step at all. And then he almost shows like a rip move, gets into these long strides, immediately into the spin, which has been so nasty in the NFL. With the clean win on Penei Sewell, you love to see it. And then also Dan Skipper, sounds like he kind of got under his pads, got an inside win there. And that's the thing with Dan Skipper, is that he's going to connect with you early, and if he does, he's going to win that rep. He typically protects his inside shoulder pretty well because he is not the most reactive athlete that has the best recovery in that sense. He's also much more on the taller side as an offensive tackle. Going back to Michigan, that's constantly what he did, is get inside win. So a little bit of dip, getting underneath pads there, that could be a problem for Dan Skipper. But this is a fantastic note for Aidan Hutchinson, man. Aidan Hutchinson is back. I want to jump in with this update because this is probably the biggest update from training camp today, even though it had nothing to do with practice. And of course, it's about the Alex Anzalone situation. Dan Campbell was essentially asked for an update on the Alex Anzalone situation, who's dealing with a hamstring injury, so he's not practicing right now. He said, we're good.
A couple days ago, and obviously he's frustrated with his current situation. Just kind of curious how important you still view him to the team.
Yeah, so look, you guys know how I feel about Alex, how we feel about Alex. You know, he's one of our dudes, man. We've leaned on him. He's a productive player. We're good. Still talking. There's no animosity here. There's nothing like that. So I'm not going to go into anything else, outside of that. But just we're going to be good. We're going to be good. And yes, we're going to need him.
Settled everything there with the whole Alex Anzalone situation. As once again, I'm not sure that he's going to ultimately end up getting the extension with the Lions. I'd like to see him stick around. I'd love to see him retire as a Lion. I love me some Alex Anzalone, but I do know he has this last year on his contract. I don't know what's going to happen there, but he is under contract, and I think that he will play. And here from Dan Campbell, it sounds like that is going to be the case, that it's going to be fine here ultimately. Now, how will it shake out long-term? I'm not really sure. I think it's going to be difficult for the Lions to find a great middle ground here with Anzalone just because of where they're at long-term, some of the tough decisions that they know they have to make financially, some of the guys that they have to pay, how their books are set up. depending on what their calculations are for where the salary cap numbers are going to go, there are some of these tough decisions that are just going to have to be made. So I do understand the idea of, at very least, not paying him early. Maybe this is something that as the season rolls along, or even just after the season, he becomes a free agent. If you really want to retire here, maybe we can reconsider then, depending on how you perform this season. But ultimately, I'm leaning towards the side where I don't think a deal does get done, right? I know I've said that. That's not to say I don't want to see it happen. I just don't think it's going to line up for both sides. I think that Alex wanting to retire here would mean that he want multiple years where he's pretty confident he's going to be here. I think for the Lions side, you could want like a 2-year deal extension, which sounds great, but you'd want to be able to get out after that first year. And I think from a price point perspective, what Alex knows he's worth versus what the Lions would be willing to pay him, I don't know how those line up either. It's just a tough situation. So we'll really get a sense on how the Lions feel about this soon, ultimately soon. But from hearing this from Dan Campbell, it does bring the positive of hopefully this means that we're good to go with Alex Anzalone. It sounds like it does, at least for this season, and we'll see how it all figures out. But ultimately, he's under contract, man, and we do need him for this year. He changes so much for this team, but also, we saw that last season, linebacker depth gets really strong if Alex Anzalone is here. We've heard a lot of great things about Zach Cunningham. His film is strong over the past couple of years, even though there's only a little bit from last year and there's a lot more from the year before with different teams. It's still very strong, right? It's not just about the numbers. He's got very strong film, and we've heard a lot of great things to this point. I can't wait to see him in person and see what this guy actually looks like on the field. But if Alex Anzalone's here and you had a guy like Cunningham with his flexibility to play on the ball, off the ball, Mike, Will, Sam, I think he can play all of those spots. And then also on top of that, having another guy that can do that in Barnes who can literally play everywhere. Like, you now have 4 dudes you really like, that you really already know what you have, I believe. And then on top of that, Malcolm Rodriguez eventually returning, which I think adds another guy to that played on the ball last year for us. That might be our best blitzing linebacker, hopefully eventually getting back. That posted the video of him working out and working back into shape with a little bit of rock music in the background. I wasn't expecting that, Malcolm, but I see you, okay, with the rock music. He looks good. We've heard a lot of positive about him. October is kind of the estimation right now for Malcolm, and he's working with the trainers off to the side, but on the field, running around, and you can see that he's trying to work back to that normal speed. Seems like he's in a really good spot, though, right now of that process. So that gives you a really strong linebacker room. And again, that's not including any of the other guys like the Grant Stewarts to that mix. So hopefully we have Alex this year. And hopefully this means that we're all good. I saw a little smirk by Dan Campbell, so I'm believing we're in a good spot right now. Another guy that I can't wait to see in person, as a side note, is Isaac Tesla. It seems like we have constantly gotten positive updates from Isaac Tesla every day in training camp. At least there's been one positive note. And again, there was one today on a 3rd down from Kyle Allen. Had a big first down reception on the sideline. I just want to see what this guy looks like in person, right? Obviously, he's not Kelvin Johnson, but when you saw him, he just looked different. He looked different on TV. I want to see what it looks like for Isaac Tesla in person. That is a big man that apparently was a handful once again today, and then when they went into their tackling drills one-on-one, he was a handful for Mo Norris to bring down, and he ultimately ended up winning that rep. I want to see what that guy looks like. I'm fired up to see that. Like in years past, there had been that struggle between the backup quarterbacks finding that consistency and connection, the second and third string battle, until Hendon Hooker kind of entered the fold. But even for him, we just haven't seen a lot of him outside of last year. So for him, it was still so much of a development for Hendon Hooker coming off the injury from college and missing that kind of significant amount of time. But this year, there's been so many positive notes on the backup quarterbacks rolling early, finding good connections with these young receivers. Dominic Lovett, Isaac Tesla, Jacoby Keeney-James, like all of these guys have been impactful. Even Jackson Meeks has had some good notes in there as well. So all of these young guys, I'm curious to see what the veterans are doing, right? We've heard a little bit on special teams from them. I don't really know what that's looking like from a depth perspective, but in terms of the young guys, there's been a lot of positives there. On the injury note side of things, it sounds like Tim Patrick really didn't participate today with the team. He was mainly more so just out there with the trainer, so we'll have to kind of keep our eye on that as well. I'm going to talk about Jack Campbell because with the pads on, the physicality is starting, going to the ground now. You're going to have that. So with Jack Campbell pass rushing reps, it sounded like he had a couple of wins today on David Montgomery one-on-one, which on one hand is a little bit surprising because Dave Montgomery is a fantastic pass protector. But on the other side of things, Jack Campbell had a lot of these opportunities this past year. According to NFL, he had 13 pressures, but according to PFF, he had the 6th most pass rush snaps from any off-ball linebacker in the NFL this past season, which speaks to the fact that he was constantly on the field on 3rd down. We talked about yesterday how it's Jack Campbell's defense and how he's kind of leaning into taking over that role role for the Lions, and it makes a ton of sense with what he added in terms of value this past year. And this is the kind of area where when you look at Jack Campbell, you say to yourself, where's a clear spot that he could take another step? It's his ability as a pass rusher. I remember coming out of Iowa, it was his ability to break down in the backfield, be controlled in the backfield, and consistently finish in those spots. But it wasn't that he was a dynamic rusher or he had a lot of ways to win that you would point to. And I think for Jack Campbell, now this could be that next step for him to take. It's like if he's constantly going to be out there on third down, on one hand, you would like to see him continue to add and continue to develop as a man coverage piece so that we have that versatility. He flashed it this past season, but continue to add to that. We see how capable he is as a zone coverage piece, even in man coverage defenses where he can play as that rat backer, cover a lot of ground. We see how impactful he could be there, but now what can he add as a pass rusher? And for him to have a couple of early wins against Dave Montgomery is definitely a good start because I think I know what I'm going to get out of Dave Montgomery from that side of things. So I like hearing that kind of news for Jack Campbell, who seems like he was very slippery, he was tough to get hands on, and he was getting upfield. So when I look back and I was like, let me just remind myself, was Jack Campbell getting after it and I just didn't realize it this past year? And I would say no, Jack Campbell was not getting after it as a blitzer this past season. Yes, he had a lot of opportunities, but his pressures were typically a lot of the same things. It was, number one, he would do a good job as a blitzer as he would open up stun opportunities. He was a great crash player, just jolting off offensive linemen from defensive linemen that way they could get upfield, and because of that, he could find some slither. He also carried a lot of contact balance, so Jack Campbell could really deal with that contact and continue to work his way upfield. The other element would be that he would run through a running back, and I guess that's kind of what he did here to Dave Montgomery, but it sounds like it was more with his slippery side than just running over Dave Montgomery because that's not going to be easy to do. But that's how he got pressure last year as well, is he would just run over running backs. Like he would attack downhill. Again, he's a big-bodied frame that could get his hands inside and create a jolt, and that's how he would spill quarterbacks out of the pocket. Or it was maybe he was on the ball and the play just went on too long, and then he would chase the quarterback down. Or he went from transitioning to I'm in coverage, I have no assignment, let me step down and just chase the quarterback. But there wasn't a lot of true, like, oh man, you see that different pass rush move? You see how when you work him against a tackle, he has a little shake? Like, you just didn't see really any of that. So for me, I'm excited to see if this can take a next step in his game, because if it does, that and continuing to develop as a man coverage piece are the two areas I think clearly have the most to grow. But man, you start to kind of add into that, and that doesn't mean be an elite blitzer, but if you're going to be on field all three downs, if you can continue to be a valuable threat, even if that is just as a stunt rusher, because the Lions do a lot of those games, or that is the ability to find openings and have really good vision and find creases, if you can continue to add to that, maybe add a little bit more in terms of what you can bring rather than just speed to power or a bull rusher that just connects with guys, if you can just add a little bit more to that element, the game is becoming very well-rounded here for Jack Campbell. It sounds like Christian Mahogany's been off to a pretty hot start. Again, this is the first day with pads, so we don't have a lot to go on here, but he had a win today against Chris Smith. He kind of anchored down against Chris Smith, which to me is more so, I think, so important on the Chris Smith side of things, because I want to see him continue to find ways to win. I want to see him add some juice as a rusher, because I think that's really what he's lacking right now. He had some really good effort wins this past season, but being able to add some sort of go-to move as a rusher would be fantastic for him. And for Mahogany, it sounds like there's really been no rotation there. I mean, there's a rotation here today between center and guard, but there hasn't really been a rotation at that left guard spot. It's just been Christian Mahogany, which is a great note. Sounds like he's been an awesome puller. He's not guys on their backs getting up to the second level, but in pass protection, we get a good note to start things off. Now, as for the interior offensive line with center and guard, this is the second straight day we've seen Tate Ratledge working at right guard and Graham Glasgow working at center.
Oh, just, when you get the day off, you have the ability to kind of sit back, look at it all, think about it, and then it's like, what, let's just go ahead and throw Graham back in there at center and get Tate some of these guard reps. We're still going to work him at center, but let's go ahead and do this and see what this looks like for a little bit. We go into pads. And so, like I say, we're just, we're seeing what we can find. What's the best combination? Who's going to play best where? And so Tate will get some center reps. You can go back inside on some stuff.
And Dan Campbell pointed out that, hey, when you had that day off, you can kind of evaluate things, and he kind of walked away like, let's get a look of what it looks like with Graham Glasgow at guard. Let's get Tate Ratledge some reps at center, because really up until yesterday through the first few days, it's only been Tate Ratledge at center. So now we're starting to get that transition of let's see what it looks like with Graham at center. We know how excited he was to work at right guard. So I don't think this necessarily means that this is going to be the way that it looks, because again, I don't think we really have a lot of great notes until we start getting into the preseason, because I would assume we're going to see some Tate Ratledge. We may not see much of Graham Glasgow, but we would probably see some Ratledge. Now, even if we don't, joint practices, at very least just having pads on at training camp is where we can start to get some real takeaways of what it looks like, these one-on-one opportunities, because ultimately up to this point, I don't think we really know much about what it looks like when guys are physical with you, when guys are getting contact. So I'm not going to make too much of this note as of now, but I will say this based on what Dan Campbell said. I'm completely with him in the idea of let's get the best 5 on the field. So if the best 5 is, hey, Graham Glasgow's a little bit better at center, where Graham Glasgow is in his career, maybe he is at his best at center. And maybe that's alongside Tate Ratledge because Tate Ratledge is just more comfortable at guard right now. He'll believe Tate Ratledge, long-term fit in the NFL, long-term fit with the Lions, will be at the center position. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be year one. So I have no issue with this. Just get the best 5 on the field, the best 5 that are most comfortable right now. And we'll work with it as we go forward. Similar to a Frank Ragnow when he came out from Arkansas, right? It's like, okay, we can start one way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the career outlook has to be. And that's what I thought it was going to be when we initially drafted and we did our breakdown video. I didn't think that meant Tate Ratledge right away. Get your best 5 out there, and eventually Tate will take over that role. But at the time that we did that video, I also didn't know Frank Ragnow was going to retire. So I thought clearly this guy's going to be the guard, and eventually he'll be the center. And then he retired, and it was like, okay, I guess it's now. But that doesn't have to be the case. Get your best 5 out there, and as long as Graham Glasgow's comfortable there, and if it's a better Tate Ratledge at guard, then by all means do that. We just want the best 5 on the field. But I still think that we are getting an insight to what the future is going to look like, and that seemingly is going to be Tate Ratledge at that position. But there's still so much that needs to be unpacked there, and we have to learn, understanding what he's doing, getting to the right spots. Hey, what's your assignment here on this zone play, right? The checks up front, the comfortability with golf. Outside of all of that, from physically being able to win one-on-one, win your matchups from that alignment, that's where we start to get those answers. But I would assume from the mental side is where they started to get a sense of where Tate Ratledge was at in terms of where he was getting to in spots, all of the calls that he's going to be responsible for. All of that is where you can get the sense of to this point. It sounded like Tate Ratledge had some good reps in there, right? He had a draw, it sounds like, with Pat O'Connor, and then he also had a win on Keith Cooper pretty easily, according to Pride of Detroit, which, again, that's the element where it's like, hey, Keith Cooper, I don't know. I really don't know if I believe that he's going to be able to bring consistent pass rush presence as a 3-tech defensive tackle. I don't know if he's going to do that. I don't know that I can look at his Houston film and say that I believe that he has that ability. I would love to see it. He's long. He's an athletic interior defensive lineman that in sub packages has the body type to do that. I don't know that he has the ability to do that on all 3 downs, but definitely can play in that big D end role like we saw last year with the 0, the 3-tech, and the 4-eye on the opposite side. You push Hutchinson on the edge, and now he's rushing off the edge. Then you can walk down a linebacker to the line of scrimmage or play him off ball if you want to, depending on what you're in. I think he's definitely capable of doing that as a defensive end based at his body type, but as an interior rusher, that's kind of an unknown. So this is the time to start to learn that and see if he can stand out. As for Pat O'Connor, I'm actually hearing a lot of good things about Pat O'Connor. Like, it's not just that, oh, he plays everywhere, but it sounds like he's winning. He's getting some wins. He's getting the job done. It seems like there's some positives there. Him getting in a good battle with Tate Ratledge is a very positive sign. And again, if you go back, even though last year he was primarily a nose tackle for the Lions, if you go back, say, with Tampa Bay in 2022, where about half of his snaps were listed as a defensive end, he did play up and down the line. He was with Casey Rogers, so we've seen that before. And if you just look at his get off his first step, that gives us a big step up there just in general because, one, he got a lot more comfortable at nose tackle. Truly, I think there's limitations there, but if you just go back a few years when he was lined at nose tackle, it looked night and day. Like, a few years ago at nose tackle, it looked like a clear problem for him. Like, he was just going to get bullied and pushed around. This past season, that wasn't the case, and he really leaned into his strengths, and he was able to highlight those. Speaking of that, Giovanni Manu, going now into his 2nd season, Dan Campbell told us that he's got a different body now. Like, he's really kind of dialed in, Giovanni Manu has, and he had a really nice win, I guess, today against Isaac Ukwu, settling him down, dealing with the power of Isaac Ukwu, pocket collapsing skill set with a little bit of quickness and kind of the skip move, and it sounds like he ended up getting a win on Isaac Ukwu. So again, we want to see if someone can stand out within that group defensively, and for Giovanni Manu, I love to hear all the positives so far. Can't wait to see what he looks like in person as well. Go to some of these 11 on 11 notes according to DetroitLions.com. Starting things off with the first team offense, who got it started with Jamison Williams, who ended up having a first down grab, and then Jahmyr Gibbs getting outside, picking up a first down on the ground, which was ultimately ended, though, by Aidan Hutchinson getting a sack on Jared Goff. This takes me back. This takes me back to all the previous training camps when you would have a drive going, we hear the list of like, oh, how is it going? And then it would end it was like Aidan Hutchinson sack. And that's how it always seemingly ended. It was like Aidan Hutchinson did something and he destroyed the drive. So great news from that side. I love to hear all of these positives for Hutchinson, right? On one end, you're like, okay, well, who is he going against? Is it Dan Skipper and not Taylor Decker? Like, how comfortable are we with that? But for me right now, it's just all the good things I can hear about Aidan Hutchinson, I want to hear. Two rookies getting things started. Isaac Tesla having a big first down on a third down on the sideline. Again, that tells me that he's a reliable target. He's creating space. He always kind of has natural space because he's so big that against most matchups, he's just going to stand out. You can just give him a chance. But the sideline feel, that ability to catch the ball away from his body, as Jared Goff brought up, and then again, having that body control alongside just the reliability, the contested situation success, which is one of the areas that I thought was a little bit untapped in. It's like, okay, how good was he going to be in contested situations? Sounds like there's been a lot of positives there. And then, of course, Dominic Lovett underneath makes a big play that ends up winning the drill for the offense with an underneath pass, run after the catch opportunity. Now, he today, one-on-one, ended up getting upended by Amik Robertson because he tried to hurdle over him. And I always wondered with Dominic Lovett, how much creativity would he have with the ball in his hands, right? Did he really have a ton of that shake? I always thought that he was just really good at, he would get upfield, there wasn't a lot of false movement, he transitioned very quickly, and his vision was on point. But how much true creativity did he have with the ball in his hands? Well, today, Amik Robertson said 0. I'm going to upend this dude trying to jump over me. But I also don't hate the idea that he may have stole that from St. Brown. There's a chance that he saw St. Brown jump over somebody because he always seems to do that. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to add that to my bag. It can't hurt. It definitely can't hurt. Sam Laporta showed off a lot of his shake today, I guess. He ended up making Brian Branch miss one-on-one, which is, I mean, that's incredible. Not just running over him and being like, hey, I'm bigger than this guy, but like actually making him miss, also doing it in team drills. That's impressive. Like, that goes back to Sam Laporta out of Iowa. Sam Laporta had a lot of shake. I thought that was his best element, was what he could do with the ball in his hands. And I think we've seen flashes of that. We've seen some incredible run-after-catch opportunities where once he gets out, when he gets running, he starts to kind of look like a running back a little bit. That's incredibly impressive because making Brian Branch miss, he is one of the best tacklers in football, if not the best tackler in football, truly. Even though Jared Goff told us yesterday that, hey, maybe some of this is kind of overblown. Like, yeah, there's new things, but there's always new things. Regardless if we change coordinators or not, there's going to be changes, there's going to be new things. But a lot of it is the same. A lot of things are similar to what they were in the past, right? It's not as crazy as you would expect, which makes sense because the Lions were successful. But of course, John Morton is going to have his own flavor, right? You have to let John Morton be John Morton. You have to let him have what he's comfortable with and what his flavor is on everything. Just have a lot of weapons. A quarterback that can do it. You have an offensive line that seemingly can do it. We'll see as we go forward. But then you have a lot of dudes that are just a problem to match up with. Ultimately, that should find success. There's kind of a baseline there of like, you should find some success with this. There's guys that can make it happen. And if that's the mentality of we just want to get one-on-ones for our playmakers, you should win. You should win if you can get those one-on-ones more often than not because your players more often than not are just going to be better than the opposition. Trevor Nowatzki ended up having a swim win on Brock Wright one-on-one, but Sam Laporta held up Trevor Nowatzki, which is impressive. And I think back to Sam Laporta's development as a blocker, and it's his ability to bend, right? I heard a tight end recently say that like that's the big thing that I would look for blocking upside is your ability to bend and sink. And I think Sam Laporta has shown since the beginning that he has that. So the Lions were able to identify the upside as a blocker, and he's clearly developed into a very capable blocker. He talked about that, I believe, this offseason as well. But for Trevor Nowatzki now, instead of Jack Campbell, he actually, to me, did show real improvement throughout the season of what he could bring in terms of the juice off the edge. And I want to see that continue to develop because while I do think there's some limitations there, he's not going to be a dominant rusher. He's not going to be the opposition of Aidan Hutchinson. You're just like, let him go, let him make it happen. But I thought as the year went on, he got better. Like the first time we played Chicago and Braxton Jones, he pretty much was shut out the entire game. Didn't look like he had any variety of how to win as a rusher. He kind of just tried to consistently get off the edge, speed to power, and there was no real power there, and he would just get held up, anchored down, and that was it. But as the season went on, I thought you started to see a little change of pace. You started to see a little bit of craftiness into his entry points. He still was trying to win just by rushing off the edge and using his speed off the edge, but he was able to maintain that speed really well as he turned the corner. So there was a little threat there. And then, of course, when he got one-on-one tight ends, he really was able to flash because he could transition speed to power. He could create power from being stalled out, right? He could have those second effort wins as rusher one-on-one tight ends. You got to see him kind of stand out in that role. You expect him to be kind of outmatched against offensive tackles. He's not the longest. He's not the most powerful. He's not the fastest in terms of that first step, but he showed different crafty ways to win. And then for him, the lateral movement, the shake at the top of the rush to be able to redirect and find the ball, he showed a lot of those flashes this past season, and he's a guy that I'm specifically excited to see if he continues to grow in that area because he grew a lot this past year. He played different roles for us. He started to settle into those roles. I mean, it felt like a rookie season for him as well as a Lions defender just with the snaps that he got. And I think last year we saw him really grow as a rusher, so I'd love to see that continue. Grant Stewart had a win on Kenny Yeboah today, one-on-one, took him back to the pocket, and then also Craig Reynolds did his thing in pass protection, found a lot of success there. For the second straight day, I would say DJ Reader got a lot of love, and you're going to see him here at nose tackle over to zero. We talked about his performance, especially early when there was a better supporting cast around him because you felt his impact. He still had an impact throughout the season, but to me, he's never going to be the consistent finisher, but he can always be a pocket pusher and someone that just caused disruption. And I think he flashed it last year, but the second straight day, he's gotten love for really showcasing that. A couple of run stuffs today. DJ Reader year 2, we saw that massive jump with Cincinnati in the past. Can we get that out of him here as well? DJ Reader was a heck of a free agent signing, so I'm not ready to say that this guy isn't going to be great for us. And I just think that with some healthier pieces around him, and hopefully in a year or two, that becomes the case. Zach Horton was getting some fullback reps today like he has a traditional fullback, which is exciting because I think that's going to be his opportunity to make the team, because I think that's kind of Zach Horton's skill set. And I think we have a couple of guys that fit into that. But Zach Horton has experience as kind of a lead blocker. It's just sometimes technically I didn't think it was always the cleanest, but he showed the mentality to do it. Like, he was fearless to put his nose in and hit somebody. So if there is going to be a role that I think he can carve out, that's going to be the role to do it. Is like, hey, I have flexibility. I can play in line. I can catch the ball a little bit underneath. I can add some run after catch. I got the toughness to stand in line and block, and I think that's where I really want to see that kind of come together. Like, Luke Deal's good in that spot. I want to see that be added for Zach Horton, but Zach Horton clearly has the body type to be a lead blocker, to settle in like a fullback, and that would be a great spot for him to be able to settle into that role. You look at it, Lions brought a lot of guys in with similar traits, guys that would block first, then could add a little bit of juice in the passing game with some run after catch, really just level 1 threats. They had a lot of guys that are very similar from that sense. Clearly, that's a very legitimate role in this offense if you can carve it out. Lions are using 2-back sets to this point. That is a great note there for Zach Horton, and we'll see if now when the pads have come on, he can start to carve out a role there. Seemingly started to carve out roles. Eric Halleck continues the positives. Dan Campbell spoke about him, speaking about his versatility. He said, we can put him at nickel. He's getting those safety reps. We can play him at wide corner. That's why we like him, because of that coverage ability, his ability to play everywhere. And today it was noted that he had a big tackle for loss on a swing pass to the running back, himself into a position where it's very much so on the table that this guy ends up making the team. Well, the other notes that we got today from 11 on 11s, Jacoby Keeney James had a nice big crossing reception that ended up, I think, being caught by the sideline that turned into a big play. Robichaud, again, having some success with the ball in his hand. Sounds like he's had a lot of big plays. And then also Miles Adams got some love. This was kind of hidden, but Miles Adams apparently had a win on Kingsley Eguakon with a nice spin move, which is great because he showed that agility and athleticism this past year. It was just like, how fast can we get to it? He showed the effort wins. He showed the ability to get second effort wins, but it was like, can we get those first wins? Like, can we get early wins? It wasn't a one-on-one drill. I would assume it was pretty quick that he was able to counter off, like got an edge, and then he spun around Kingsley Eguakon. Number one, Kingsley Eguakon showed some examples of that could happen last season in the preseason. He was very aggressive, but man, he could lose early. He'd get up on guys. He did not contact always cleanly, and you get those kind of losses. So from Bo's perspective, we want to see the growth from Kingsley, who continues to battle in that, backup center role with Tristan Colon getting reps there, and of course Michael Neese, but also for Miles Adams, a guy that I think is going to add real juice. I think he's also on the table. Even if he doesn't make the 53, he could be valuable off the practice squad for us. I think he is one of those guys that needs to get more attention. He just really haven't played much as a Lion, but last year he showed real flashes of potential, and because of our injuries, he may become very important very fast. And Arnold versus Jamison Williams. It sounded like Jamison Williams ended up maybe catching Terrion Arnold a little bit off guard, getting a win one-on-one, wide receiver DB tackling drill, but then Terrion came back and was like, yeah, that's not cool. I'm just going to drop this dude really quickly there. So an awesome back and forth between those two. Terrion was a hitter in college. He's a very good tackler. And Jamison Williams, man, he's been a little bit of a dog through the first few days that we've seen so far. Just adding some of that dog mentality, man. You see his energy. Guy seems to bring a fantastic energy, I would assume, to the locker room. Every time we see him, we hear him talk, there's a very positive vibe coming from Jamison Williams. Now he's trying to run over dudes. Like, I'm with it. I'm with it. Jamison Williams is seemingly really coming into it. You've heard a lot of positives for some of these young guys on special teams as gunners. A lot of guys having success, from Jackson Meek specifically to Rocky Sin. But I'll make note of the Dominic Lovett note today, who apparently had a really nice move against Amik Robertson, ended up getting back there. Rocky Sin beat a double team. The Lovett one stands out to me because I think that's where he's going to thrive. Like, I know that Tesla did some of that back in Arkansas, but to me, Lovett had the skill set better for special teams. I think we pointed that out in our breakdown, but I'm pretty sure we did. Like, this is a guy that's built to be very successful on special teams because he's so tough to connect with. Like, if you watch him as a route runner, he separates seemingly effortlessly all the time. So the details are going to be key, finishing the process, all that stuff as a receiver, but just the ability to shake guys and make it very tough for guys to connect with him in a phase throughout a rep. Like, the difficulty that he put on SEC corners week after week after week, he just looked like a guy who's like, yeah, he's going to be a handful 101. So when you put him as a gunner, Now there's no ball to catch really, right? You're tracking it, right? So you have to have the tracking skill set, which he has. And then outside of that, it's like, hey, make sure that guy can't stay connected with you. I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Prop, for watching. I'll have notes tomorrow from practice, and I'm out.